Hello, here we go. This is session 13, all right? We are still in chapter 2, section 4, all right, IV for you Romans. Healing as a release from fear. All right. Now, before we start, I just want to say Jesus is going to be introducing a word called magic. His idea of magic is that it's an attempt to solve a problem where the problem doesn't exist. Because everything is going on in the mind. Jesus constantly telling us. Right? And the idea is not to, jump on that thought before you're ready. You can't jump on that train before you're ready. You can't drive in the Indianapolis 500 until you take your written exam, at least, So, and one thing we're always going to emphasize, and Jesus will emphasize it too in the course, this is a process. We're the ones that believe in time and space. So what happens is Jesus uses time and space. Right? So we're going to use time. It's a process. Right? You don't just jump from here to ultimate reality. Right? It's too much of a threat to the thought system that we adhere to. Right? It's too fearful to do that. Right? Some people have instantaneous and spontaneous meetings with reality. Right? And that's true that some people have that. Right? And then they understand what's going on around them. They become lucid dreamers, so to speak. Right? They understand everything that's going on. And the first thing that evolves is compassion. It comes right out of that understanding. Become compassionate and kind. Okay? So the magic is an attempt to solve a problem where the problem doesn't exist. Dr. Wapnick used to say magic is a maladaptive solution to a non-existent problem. All right. Whenever he said something like that, he always reminded me of my father when my father would like to use big words. All right. And so I always liked that explanation of magic. But it's, we see a problem and we think it's outside the mind, and so we use techniques that are outside the mind to fix the problem. And by outside the mind, I mean we're not contacting the fact that we still exist in the oneness. In reality, we still exist in the mind of God, and there is no problem. There is no vulnerability. There is no lack. Right? But we need to work up to that, most of us anyway. Including moi. All right? And in this section, it's a clear statement now. One of the first times he makes a clear statement that the body doesn't do anything. It only responds to what the mind is thinking. Okay? And, the result of the thought of separation is our experience here. And that includes happiness and sickness, for better or worse, sickness and health, stuff like that. All right? Those are results of thinking that you're separated from the mind of God. Okay? So, healing as a release from fear. Our emphasis is now on healing. The miracle is the means, the atonement is the principle, and healing is the result. To speak of a miracle of healing is to combine two orders of reality inappropriately. Healing is not a miracle. The atonement, or the final miracle, is a remedy, and any type of healing is a result. The kind of error to which the atonement is applied is irrelevant. All healing is essentially the release from fear. To undertake this, You cannot be fearful yourself. You do not understand healing because of your own fear. Right? So what he's actually saying is that, once again, there's no order of difficulty in miracles. Right? The atonement, the era to which the atonement is applied is irrelevant. Right? Now remember, the atonement is the correction of the thought that says I'm separated from my source. I'm separated from oneness. I'm separated from God. I'm on my own. I did something wrong. I'm lacking. I used to have everything. Now I have nothing. He says the atonement, that's the word we use in the Course, is the correction for that thought. Right? The atonement says you never left the mind that created you. You never left God. You never left heaven. Right? These are the words we use here in our earthly experience. Right? So the atonement, or the final miracle, is a remedy, and any type of healing is a result. Right? So he talks about the miracle of healing combining two orders of reality. Right? There's the ego's reality, and there's reality. But we'll get, those things will become clearer as we go along. All right? When he says all healing is essentially the release from fear. So what he's talking about is that all healing is essentially the realization that you are not here on your own. You're not here as an individual in this dog-eat-dog existence. Right? You're not here running away from a God who's looking for vengeance because you ruined heaven. Right? That's all very fearful. He said all healing, the mind is healed when you realize that, oh, I never left. I never left heaven. God is never angry with me. I'm not here in this, this place where I have to fight for my own existence. If I don't get my next breath, what's going to happen? If I don't get my next meal, what's going to happen? And so on. If I can't pay the rent, and it works its way all the way, it just extends its tendrils, all that thinking. So all healing is essentially a release from fear. It's a release from the ego thought system. Then the mind, the split mind, is healed. And there's the oneness back in our reality. And everything's okay. Alrighty then. He says to undertake this, you can't be fearful yourself. You have to step, even if it's momentarily, you have to step out of that ego thought system. And he says, you don't understand healing because of your own fear. We're stuck, not stuck. We're here in the ego thought system. Right? And it's got all kinds of arguments on why you shouldn't even question it. So, let's just move on. A major step in the atonement plan is to undo error at all levels. Sickness, or not right-mindedness, is the result of level confusion, because it always entails the belief that what is amiss on one level can adversely affect another. We have referred to miracles as the means of correcting level confusion. For all mistakes must be corrected at the level on which they occur. Only the mind is capable of error. The body can act wrongly only when it is responding to misthought. The body cannot create, and the belief that it can, a fundamental error, produces all physical symptoms. Physical illness represents a belief in magic. The whole distortion that made magic rests on the belief that there is a creative ability in matter which the mind cannot control. This error can take two forms. It can be believed that the mind can miscreate in the body, or that the body can miscreate in the mind. When it is understood that the mind, the only level of creation, cannot create beyond itself, neither type of confusion need occur. So, he says only the mind is capable of error. Right? The body can act wrongly, but only when it's responding to misthought. Now, things like that, misthought, that's belief that you're separated from God. That's a misthought. And the body is the result of that, and this whole world and universe is the result of that. And so this body is responding to that. It's the result of that thought. And when he says the atonement is to undo error at all levels. Right? He's talking about reality and on this level, the physical level and the spiritual level, so to speak. So undo errors all over the place. And it's that the correction that you never left the mind of God. Once we fully realize that, all errors they just disappear. Everything's corrected. Now, when he says sickness is the result of level confusion, because it entails the belief that what is amiss on one level can adversely affect another. Okay. So when he says, and Dr. Wapnick would say this is early on in the writing, so you get a group of words with hyphens in them called not right-mindedness. Okay? And that only means that you've chosen the ego. So not right-mindedness is wrong-mindedness. And the wrong mind is that part of the split mind that contains the whole ego thought system. Right? So sickness, or the ego thought system, is the result of level confusion, because it always entails the belief that what is amiss on one level can adversely affect another. So we believe we're separated from God. And all of a sudden we have all these ailments and things that are wrong, whether it's physical or emotional, psychological, or there's something wrong with my bank account. There's something wrong with my job, with my relationships. And he's saying it's the confusion because we think there's something wrong on this physical level. He says it's all the result of what needs to be corrected on the higher level, in the level of the mind. He says only the mind is capable of error. The body cannot create. It's a major mistake that we make, and we constantly convince ourselves that the body can create. Right? I mean, happy birthday. So and this is part of the process of just observing what goes on in the ego thought system, what goes on in your life, what is it that you believe. It's not to condemn these things, it's just to observe them. And when the time is right, you ask, can I see this, help me to see this correctly. Help me to see it correctly. And you'll be guided to see things differently. You will understand, but within that understanding, there will be a gentleness and a kindness, right? You're not going to walk around telling people, there is no birth, there is no death. I'm not buying you a birthday present. You know, I don't have to buy Christmas presents. You know, whatever it is. You don't be a nut. You just observe, and from that observance and asking for correction, there comes an abiding kindness, right? An abiding graciousness and gentleness, and everything is okay, no matter who's acting out. Right? Everything's okay, even if your body is acting out. We can find a way to be peaceful within those situations, right? Because the body does not create. The body cannot create, and the belief that it can, a fundamental error, produces all physical symptoms. Right? Oh, I have a rash. Oh, I have this and that. I have an illness. Oh, how'd you get that? Oh, I don't know. And then there'll be all, new agey things that will tell us, well, you were thinking something, and that's what happened, and it manifested. That's all well and good. It might get you on the right ladder, but we have to go further. Right? What we have to do is ask for the correct way of seeing things, and we make the correction in the mind. Okay. And he says, physical illness represents a belief in magic. Right? Saying physical illness, there's something wrong outside my mind. There's something wrong there, and it has to be fixed. So we use magical solutions. And he's going to tell you later on, don't deny, right? This is a process. If you have indigestion, take an antacid. If you have a headache, take an aspirin. Sometimes we need the combination. All right? We have to adhere until we can work ourselves to a point where you understand everything. All right? But until then, you don't want to go around telling your friends, oh, you're sick because you're defending against the truth of who you really are. All you have to do is, connect with the Holy Spirit in your mind, and you'll be okay. Yeah, if it was that easy, it would be great, and everybody would be on that train. But you have to be nice to people. You have to be kind. You be kind to yourself. If you have an ailment, you go to the necessary practitioner. Really. I have something wrong with my foot. I couldn't walk. Okay, I'm asking, how can I be peaceful within this situation? But I really would prefer to not have this situation. So you go to a doctor. And the doctor says, he'll do this, that, and the other thing. Next thing you know, you can walk. Your foot doesn't hurt. All right, so be normal. Ken used to always say that, be normal. Right? This is a process. You just keep in touch with that part of your mind that remembers your true existence, that remembers your true existence as spirit. Just keep in touch with that part of your mind and be an observer of your existence here. And don't be the judge. Oh, I shouldn't have thought that. I shouldn't have done that. How could I have thought that? I've been studying this course for so many years. Stop doing that. My friend Emily used to say to me, Kevin, you can't even be in the same room with yourself. I would judge myself so harshly. I still have the tendency to do that, but I can also say, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing. I don't want to do that anymore. It helped me see myself correctly. All right? So, when it is understood that the mind, the only level of creation, cannot create beyond itself, neither type of confusion can occur. Right? So we won't think that the body can create something wrong with the mind, and we won't think that the mind can create something wrong in the body. You know, all this, he says, everything will straighten itself out. Right? When you understand that the only level of creation, the mind, cannot create beyond itself, right? Can only make that decision. Right? And then once it reunites with oneness, the creations in the mind are the extension of oneness, the extension of universality and happiness and comfort and all, whatever good word you can think of. So, paragraph 3, page 23. Only the mind can create because spirit has already been created, and the body is a learning device for the mind. Learning devices are not lessons in themselves. Their purpose is merely to facilitate learning. The worst a faulty use of a learning device can do is fail to facilitate learning. It has no power in itself to introduce actual learning errors. The body, if properly understood, shares the invulnerability of the atonement to two-edged application. This is not because the body is a miracle, but because it is not inherently open to misinterpretation. The body is merely a part of your experience in the physical world. Its abilities can be, and frequently are, over-evaluated. However, it is almost impossible to deny its existence in this world. Those who do so are engaging in a particularly unworthy form of denial. The term unworthy here implies only that it is not necessary to protect the mind by denying the unmindful. If one denies this unfortunate aspect of the mind's power, one is also denying the power itself. All right? You know, sometimes Jesus is like understated, but he's just being very calm and very logical. Right? He's telling us the body is merely a part of your experience in the physical world. It's not good, it's not bad, it's neutral. It just is. It's there to help us learn. Excuse me. It's here to help us learn that there's something beyond the physical. All right? This is not the end-all and be-all. That's what we're here to learn. It facilitates learning. Right? He says the body can be, and frequently its abilities are, over-evaluated. All right? We give it too much credit. But he says it's almost impossible to deny. And he says, and if you do deny it, it's an unworthy form of denial. And what he means by that is that it's not necessary. It's just not necessary to protect the mind by denying the unmindful, by denying the body and denying the ego thought system. He says, you're not going to protect your mind that way. The thing is to realize the power of the mind. And then you realize you have the power to choose. You have the power to choose the correction. Help me to see this whole experience correctly. Right? If one denies and he calls this, if one denies this unfortunate aspect of the mind's power, one is also denying the power itself. Right? You can't say, oh, the body, it doesn't exist, the world doesn't exist. It's well, you're denying the power of your mind because the mind thought that. And there it was, in the imagination. in the imagination. It's like a hallucination. Now, all these things like, calling this whole experience a hallucination or a dream, just keep it on the back burner, as they used to say. Keep it in the back of your mind. Hold on to it, but pay attention to what it is that you really do believe, and don't judge yourself for it. And that's the way to progress. That's the way to progress into happiness within the dream, and then eventually being okay with saying, oh, that was a dream, and I can wake up now. Right? But you don't do that all at once. There's very few people that do that once, but there are people that wake up. All right? The Buddha woke up. Jesus woke up. Right? There are other people who are awake, and they're still within the dream. All right. In other words, don't deny the physical existence. People have, for centuries, ever since, the ideas came that there's something else there. People have been denying the body. They've been punishing the body. They think if they, deny their urges, they don't eat, they don't have sex, they don't, hang out with people, they stay all by themselves, and if they deny themselves this, they'll snuff out the ego thought system. They'll snuff out all human urges and things. It doesn't work. It's a magical solution, another magical solution. It doesn't work. All right? You put the lid on the pot of steam. The steam's going to get out somehow. Usually, as they say, it comes out sideways. And especially with the physical urges of the body, people have been denying themselves for centuries, as if that's going to do some good. I mean, it's fine if I have a problem, if I have an addiction, it might be a good idea to stop doing that. To deny that, right? Because in other words, there's no way of looking at it. You're denying the urge to hurt yourself. So I mean, if you're eating too much, you're drinking too much, you're having too much sex, you're gambling, you drive too fast, you love to steal stuff, there's, anything you could think of can become an addiction. It might be a good idea to stop that activity. All right. But there's always a fine line. It's a good idea to stop that activity so you could start thinking clearly. You're not controlled by the compulsions. So just be nice to yourself, okay? And don't deny your physical existence. That just doesn't work. So let's look at paragraph 4. All material means that you accept as remedies for bodily ills are restatements of magic principles. This is the first step in believing that the body makes its own illness. It is a second misstep to attempt to heal it through non-creative agents. All right. So he's saying, and he's stating the fundamental. Okay, all right. All material means that you accept as remedies for bodily ills are restatements of magic principles. All right, so you're restating the principle that there's a problem outside the mind, and I need to find the solution outside the mind. Right? So you could even say a bodily ill is the fact that I need to breathe. I need to take a certain amount of breaths every minute, or else, pretty soon things are going to start to go wrong. Or I get hungry. All right, that could be, that's a bodily condition. I get hungry. You know, well, what happens? Well, I eat something, and then a few hours later, I'm hungry again. I have to eat something again. And so on down the line. You know, I have, I have sciatica. You know, I think so I go to a practitioner of magic. I'll go to a chiropractor or go to an acupuncturist. Right? These are material means that I accept as a remedy for bodily ills. He says that's a restatement of magic principles. Right? So you're restating the fact that you think the problem's outside the mind, and you're going to get the solution out there. Okay, but you know, sooner or later the time comes when you realize the magic only works for a little while. It doesn't last forever. Okay? So he says this is the first step in believing that the body makes its own illness. He says it is a second misstep to attempt to heal it through non-creative agents. So he says the first step is to think that the body creates its own illness, and then you go out and get it fixed. He says that's another misstep. But then he's going to be very kind and gentle, and he knows it's a process. In sentence 4, in paragraph 4, he goes, "It does not follow, however, that the use of such agents for corrective purposes is evil." So it's not evil to go to the doctor. It's not evil to take an aspirin. It's not evil to take a breath. All right? It's not evil to have a sandwich. Okay? So these are reinstatement of magic principles, but just be an observer. Say, oh yeah, look, this is what I believe. I believe, you know, I'm outside of the oneness. It doesn't mean stop eating or stop breathing or, you know, just suck it up. Don't go to the doctor. It's not like that. Don't do that. All right? He says sometimes the illness has a sufficiently strong hold over the mind to render a person temporarily inaccessible to the atonement. Right? Sometimes sometimes the pain is so bad, right, that it renders me incapable of thinking, oh, help me to see this correctly. Just let me accept the fact that I never left God and I'll be okay. He says sometimes it's tough. It's almost impossible to do that because the ailment is so big. All right? It has sufficiently strong hold over the mind. Right? You're told all of a sudden, you know, one day you're walking up the stairs and you can't catch your breath and this, that, and the other thing. You go to the doctor says you have a heart problem. And he outlines the problem. It's like, oh God. You know, sometimes that can put the fear of God in you. Or you go to the doctor and he says you have some form of a cancer or something that's, you know, just so big. You know, there's something wrong with your blood, there's something wrong with your bones, there's something wrong with your brain. It's like, oh my God. And it puts us in a panic. And he says sometimes that illness has a sufficiently strong hold of your mind that you don't think about going and saying, okay, I'm connected with the universe, I'm connected with God, everything's okay. Very hard to do that, very hard. So he says in those cases, you know, in this case it may be wise to utilize a compromise approach to mind and body, in which something from the outside is temporarily given healing belief. This is because the last thing that can help the not right-minded, there's that phrase again, the last thing that can help the person who believes they're in the ego thought system or the sick is an increase in fear. Right? So he says we use these outside agents to help us decrease our fear. And when our fear is sufficiently decreased, then perhaps we can take that calming breath and just say, okay, Jesus, can you help me to see this situation correctly? Help me to see it correctly. Right? And, you know, so some certain situations will throw us into a panic. All right? And, you know, speaking from experience, I know that. All right? It's not, it can happen very quickly. And he says the last thing you need to do is increase that fear. So go get some help. Go get some help if you need help physically. Right? If you need help mentally or emotionally. He says, do it. You mix a little magic, a little miracle, until you can take more miracle. That's all. Be nice to yourself. And don't beat other people over the head with this Course in Miracles thought system. You know, Course in Miracles thought students, they can be very nutty. You know, well, you know, that sickness is a defense against the truth. You know, you can stop that flesh-eating bacteria if you just get your mind straightened out, you know. You know, be kind. If you have a friend that's got an ailment that's frightening them, realize they are frightened and just be there. Right? You can hold the space of the holy instant. You can hold that space of tranquility and serenity and let it flow through you. You don't need to say anything. You don't need to do anything. If you need to, you'll be guided to do that. Just be kind. Just be kind and gentle with people. And be kind and gentle with yourself. You know, well, I shouldn't have these headaches. I've been studying the Course for 30 years. Be nice. Be nice to yourself. Okay? We're the ones that believe in 30 years. We're the ones that believe in time. Okay? Just be nice. And when you can, you ask for the correction. You ask your higher self, Jesus. You ask your perfected self, Jesus, help me to see this correctly. Because the mind is one. Jesus' mind is your mind. So be nice. This is because it's the last thing that can help a sick person is an increase in fear. You're not doing it right. They are already in a fear-weakened state. If they are prematurely exposed to a miracle, they might be precipitated into panic. This is likely to occur when upside-down perception has induced the belief that miracles are frightening. And it might induce a miracle. The change in perception may induce a panic because all of a sudden the person realizes they become afraid of the destruction of their whole thought system. The fear is that the whole ego thought system is going to be destroyed. And now what's next? I don't know. I'm afraid. I'm afraid of the future. I'm afraid of what comes if all this is not true. Right? It's a fear of a release from the ego thought system. Right? And remember, the ego thought system throughout the course of time has taught us that God is angry. If you're going to have a meeting with God, He's going to judge you. Right? And you know what you did. And that's what the ego tells us, you know? So, and you know what you did. All right? And meanwhile, Jesus and the Holy Spirit are saying, only within the hallucination did you do something. In reality, you are the light. You are just radiant spirit. Right? But that awareness, it overwhelms us. So we've got to take in increments. It's like you want to go, it's a hot day, you want to go swimming, but your only source of swimming is this lake high up in the mountains. And that water is cold, let me tell you. So, I don't jump right in, right? We're going to go, one toe at a time. And that's the way we go into reality, is you one toe at a time until you can warm up to it, so to speak, until it's not frightening, it's not shocking, right? It's a process, right? Be nice to yourself and be nice to everybody else. That's a big part of the process. Right? So, paragraph 5. The value of the atonement does not lie in the manner in which it is expressed. That's just another restatement of there is no hierarchy of illusions, right? One problem, one solution. So the value of the correction, the value of the corrected thought, right, does not lie in the manner in which it is expressed. In fact, if it is used truly, it will inevitably be expressed in whatever way is most helpful to the receiver. This means that a miracle, to attain its full efficacy, must be expressed in a language that the recipient can understand without fear. This does not necessarily mean that this is the highest level of communication of which he is capable. It does mean, however, that it is the highest level of communication of which he is capable now. The whole aim of the miracle is to raise the level of communication, not to lower it by increasing fear. Okay? So, the correction principle, the corrected thought that says you never left your loving home, you are not on your own, right? You are surrounded by love. Whatever the correcting principle sounds like to you, right? It will be expressed in a language that we can understand. And it comes on the level of communication that we can understand. And Jesus says it's not the highest level of communication, but it's the highest point you're at now, in this moment. It's what you can understand. It will be worked out. And because we believe we're in this physical world, it may come as a thought, oh, I'll do this, or I'll say that, or someone will do or say something to us or for us, and next thing you know, oh, what I was thinking has been corrected. I'm no longer angry, I'm no longer resentful, I'm no longer fearful. Okay? I mean, just personal experience. It's something was said to me, it bothered me, made me feel angry, and it also made me feel guilty and terrible that I did something wrong, and I was having all this, and if I'm feeling guilty, maybe I'll get angry, that'll make me feel better, I'll make, him the guilty party, and it was bothering me, and, I know enough to ask Jesus, help me to see this correctly. I don't want to fight. I don't want to argue. I don't want to project guilt. And so I ask, help me to see this correctly. And I tossed and turned all night with the, going back and forth between feeling terrible, guilty, and then being resentful and angry, and then having the whole history coming up, and well, this and that, and until I had this very clear thought at some point before the break of day that said, get in touch with him and just say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that happened. Leave it at that. And I did, and it worked. It's just an example, from personal experience. But it's what reinforces the idea with me that working that process works. And it doesn't have to be big, spectacular. The angel Gabriel's not coming down from the clouds, playing his trumpet or whatever kind of horn it is, and saying, hey, here it is, here's the message. It comes in a language I can understand. And that's what happens with us. If we're just open to it, just open to it, right? And Jesus says, look, if you got to use a little magic, go ahead. But just remember, just keep in the back of your mind, right? The real solution is in the mind. Help me to see this correctly. And in that way, the process becomes obvious sooner or later because we're using this body. Right? We're using this body for kindness, for gentleness. Right? We're using this body to project, not to project, to extend, to use the words of the Course, to allow the extension to come through us, as St. Francis would say. To be that conduit, that channel of love. We're allowing the body to do that. And then we can work our way to where we realize, and we're not afraid of the fact that we're not a body, we're spirit. And thus the process moves on. All right? And we use whatever we need to get back to the mind. Okay? And as Ken would say, the problem with magic is that it works, but it doesn't work forever. Take something really extreme, like, have a pain, say, have pain. Nowadays, and hopefully they're curtailing this, you go to a doctor and they give you some opioid. And then sometimes you got to take it. I've had pain a few years ago that was just so excruciating. You got to do something. And my mind wasn't powerful, my connection with my mind was not upgraded, so to speak, enough to be able to just say, okay, this is all part of the illusion, whatever. It just wasn't able to do that. So you take the hydrocodone or the OxyContin or something. And as Ken would say, the problem is it works. But for me, it only worked 90 minutes. But then, the mind, the ego says, well, take another one, take another one, take another one. And there's the double-edged sword. Oh, it worked, but now you're addicted. And the problem is, sooner or later, it doesn't work. So sooner or later, the magic doesn't work. That's my whole point. I don't mean to, dump on all the personal stuff, all right? But sooner or later, magic doesn't work. Like you eat a meal, sooner or later, you got to eat again. Okay? But we use it to come back to the mind. All right? We just use everything to get back to the mind. And we ask, how do I see this correctly? And that's the practice for the rest of our lives. How do I see it correctly? And allow the answer to arise. Allow the awareness to arise. And it'll take the form of whatever you need, of whatever situation you're in. All right then. Nice to be with you all. I'm glad you're with me. I'm very grateful for the audience, so to speak. All righty then. And I'll talk to you again soon. Bye now.